Welcome to another Dragonlance Hangout. It is Kirinor Floorgreen the 13th. My name is Adam. Today I'm discussing Dragons of Ash and Twilight, a fan fiction anthology with a few of the authors. I would like to take a moment and thank the DL Saga YouTube members and Patreon patrons and invite you to consider becoming a member or patron. You can even pick up Dragonlance Media or get $10 signing up to start playing games using the affiliate links. All right, with that all out of the way, we have three of our awesome writers that contributed to this anthology. And again, for everyone watching, this is a fan fiction. It is not sanctioned. It is not for sale. It is all free. So I don't want to hear any complaining that we're stepping on Dragonlance's toes or anything when everyone does fan fiction. So, you know, what are you going to do? In the chat, hey, Kim, how you doing? Thanks for tuning in. Okay, so if anyone has any questions throughout the course of this in the chat, go ahead and put them in there. Put your thoughts or questions you want to ask about any specific stories. You guys have had all day to read it, so I'm sure everyone's finished it, right? And I'll make sure to try to weave in any of those questions if they do arise. Okay, so let's just start with the timetable that we were working with. Chris threw out this idea, so I'm blaming you to do this anthology. 100% your fault. And I thought, you know what, that's not a bad idea. Why don't we do something like that? There's not a lot of Dragonlance content being put out nowadays. We're lucky enough that Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman they just finished releasing their trilogy. And of course, they're starting a new trilogy with the first book out in August. But other than that, there's literally been nothing for a while. And so why not let the fans step up? We're already doing a lot of role-playing game content. So let's do a little fiction, a little fan fiction, right? So when I put out, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you finish, I'm sorry.
So when I put out the call to submit, you had basically until March. And once March got through, we did some rounds of editing and stuff like that, made sure everyone was happy with the stories and suggestions and stuff. And then went through the process of trying our best to find a cover artist. I went to a bunch of different people, but because it was a fan fiction, the people that I reached out to that I was really hoping to get, they were like, well, this is a commercial project, and so it's going to cost a commercial price. And I was just like, jaw hit the floor, like, okay, well, I clearly can't do that because there's no money in this. This is all for the fans. So I had to move on to an infinitely less expensive artist to do the cover. And while that was in the process, I was doing all the chapter cover. Oh, wow. Oh, we got another person. Fantastic. This is going to take me just a second to get it all set up. How you doing? Thanks for tuning in.
I will just say while you're setting that up, Adam, I threw out a lot of ideas.
Yeah.
I mean, you weren't this excited about my cookie inside a donut inside a cake idea, but I am glad that you picked up on this one because I just think it's such a cool project. I think the future of Dragonlance is the fans. I sadly, Wizards of the Coast has produced only one gaming product and one trilogy in the past, 20 years? At least 15. So I just think it's really cool to see the fans get to step up and come together like this. So thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, absolutely. Well, let's start. Anthony, you had came in the chat first, so do you want to introduce yourself and tell us about your story as I'm editing these videos real quick?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Anthony Simeone, and yeah, thanks again to Adam and for doing this, for bringing us together. And I've been following your channel for a while, and I saw this come up, and I'm like, I kind of procrastinated on it as I've been doing my entire very amateur writing career thus far in my life. So I'm like, should I do something? I love Dragonlance, and I'm in my role-playing group. I'm the forever GM. So I'm like, I'm always creating stories. I do have long-time aspirations of being an author. I've written some short stories over my life. I have all kinds of writing aspirations. So I'm like, you know what? Let me just throw my hat in the ring and challenge myself and do something for this. And I've had an idea for a campaign kicking around in my head. I had some idea for some NPCs kicking around in my head. So I'm like, why don't I take some of these NPCs that I was thinking about, and I wanted to set it in the years following the War of the Lands. I'm like, okay, let me set it in Haven, where it was one of my locations I wanted to do it, and I just started writing, and the rest is history. It was really just a very fulfilling process to bring these characters to life and to think about where I can go from here. Again, still doing a campaign in the future sometime, hopefully soon, starting out a campaign and having these characters and having more fully fleshed out characters. And, writing so much that I wanted to write more, and and this story that I wrote, so it's Hunters and Seekers is my story, which takes place 356 AC. So it's a few years after the War of the Lands ends. It's in Haven. It follows a bounty hunter named Charles Breck and his band of companions who are hunting down high seekers and at the beginning of the story.
Yeah.
So, and things follow from there. So that is basically where I wanted to start my campaign once I eventually get around to doing it. I'm running so many other things at once and, having a daytime job and everything and other plans and aspirations. So, but just getting into this and having this opportunity, and like we were saying earlier, there really isn't anything going on. Do any of us trust WotC to do anything with the property? No. I mean, we still have, Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman still creating content, but, it really is in the hands of the fans. I'm really a big fan of Dragonlance Nexus and what they do there. So all the content that's been coming out of that for years now. So I'm if you can't tell, I'm really inspired by this whole process and reading everyone else's stories. So, but it's, as an inspiring writer, I want to do more, and this has really lit a fire under me to kind of really get really serious about writing and be more serious about Dragonlance as well as a property. And thanks again for the opportunity.
Well, I want to ask you a couple of questions, but before I do, Cinders, I'm terribly sorry. You had come in right after we had started. What was your first name that I can add to your screen here? The author name? Can you hear me, Cinders?
Frozen? Really?
Test? Cinders?
I wrote Mishap Investigations.
Perfect.
What?
Okay.
Yes.
So I'm going to put this here. Thank you. Sorry.
You were frozen for a little bit.
Yeah. It was just brief. Okay. So, Anthony, let's talk a little bit about Hunters and Seekers, because this is a period of time that we don't really get, and specifically the content that we don't get any real information about. Up until the point where the Red Dragon Army invades Abanasinia and uses the Seeker religion to their own ends, primarily just to find the Blue Crystal Staff. But other than that, we hear nothing about the Seekers from the point Goldmoon grabs the Disc of Mishakal. And I thought it was really, really interesting to then say, okay, well, then what would happen to these people who had really stolen from the populace, leveraged BS religions in order to get political power and exert their power, and then actually worked against the very people that had been putting them into positions of power after the Red Dragon Army came. And so I really liked how you had handled the idea that, okay, well, let's have some bounty hunters and they're involved. You also then included, I don't know how, because I don't want to go into spoiler territory with the story itself, but you did include Solemnic Night in this. So when it started to get to a sort of the twist of the story, what made you want to sort of bounce off into that, more personal story that it turns into versus just keeping it where they're just hunting, seekers and they're meting out justice as they see fit?
Yeah, I really felt like it needed something more to the story rather than just to elevate it beyond like, okay, this is something that could have been in a campaign or in a role-playing session or a role-playing campaign. It just kind of going through the motions of this is what happened in our campaign. That's it. If we're doing something straight like that, I didn't feel like that was as compelling. So I wanted to put in something a little more personal. And something elemental as a father and son relationship, but one that is in a world where there's evil and good gods and magic and everything. So what could I have done? And you're right, this time period is so underbaked in terms of the content that we've gotten over the years, any of the stories we've gotten, as far as I know. I haven't read everything Dragonlance, but it was, and you think about those stories of like, it's kind of brushed over in Athens' history of like, then the Dragon's armies marched here and they marched there. But what was happening in those cities, like Haven? Mm-hmm. So it was, how can I make it something where you feel the people's pain and the populace's pain and the aftermath of being manipulated by the Seekers and then being just occupied by this invading army. So, and then to add in this dynamic of this father and son who are at odds with each other on different sides of this conflict. Just to me, that's what I needed to elevate it beyond. Oh, this is kind of something that you would just see in a campaign session, hunting bad guys.
Well, the way you ended it, it certainly makes sense that it would come from a place of the development of a campaign and this sort of open-ended, or at least it very much there's a stepping, a sense of momentum at the end of the short story. So is this something where you just wanted to leave it there for obviously the length of the stories that were being submitted, but also the idea of maybe a follow-up story or anything like that? Have you considered that?
Oh yeah, I definitely already have laid some plans and some notes and started writing the sequel. Absolutely.
Nice.
I really want to finish this story. It's just a 2-part story for now of just Charles and his father kind of, coming to a finale of some sort. But yeah, I was just so excited. And I was like, I know the word count is like 8,000, but if you could keep it to 7,500, that'd be great. Like you were really saying, 7,500, but 8,000 is okay. So I'm just like, but I was so possessed by these characters once I started writing them. And so they just really came to life for me. I know writers say that all the time, but it's true. Like you get into the story, you get so invested in these people's lives that you're like, okay, I got to stop and I got to cut it off somewhere. So I didn't want you to like yell at me and say, or reject the story
Right.
because it was more than 8,000 words. So I'm like, but I'm definitely going to finish the story. And, I have my own website. I can publish it for free there, so I'm definitely planning on doing that. When I'm going to get to it, hopefully within the year. Would love to finish it up, but yeah. Nice. So there's definitely more to come, and even more to their backgrounds. I mean, I think I've created a bunch of characters that I want to kind of go back to the war itself. And someday I want to write stories set during the war when you see these people in their formative years being shaped by the war and by the manipulation of the High Seeker. So I can go back into the past too. So I'm really excited to do all that.
I really like the way you handled the Islamic Night. And while it could be seen as a sort of like a handoff to the second half of the story, I really appreciated how he was like, well, you know what? You do kind of have dibs here. I mean, it's phrased, of course, in universe, and it makes more sense, as far as the language is concerned. But I like that most people, whenever they play Islamic Knights, in my experience, whenever they play Islamic Knights or Paladins, it's always like over the top and just sort of a caricature of a human rather than a realistic one. And for the Islamic Knight to actually like bow out of that bounty for whatever reason, I really appreciated that because it's not leaning into a trope. It's still relying on the sense of honor that is inherent with Islamic Knights. And I thought it was a breath of fresh air when it came to the type of a character. So I thought you did great. Yeah,
thank you. And I really, as far as I had a juxtaposition between Sir Haldren and his squire, just because, his squire was like the more stereotypical trope of like the honorable, sort of almost a paladin, where he's a goody two shoes. And then Sir Haldren's older. He's been around, as a matter of fact, I wanted to maybe have his background and flesh out his background more like maybe, he fought in the war. So he's a little more grizzled. He's a little more worldly. So he's not this stereotype of, he's been sent out by the Lord of Palanthas, the Lord Mayor of Palanthas, to kind of go do some maybe dirty deeds, and track down and do some bounty hunting sort of himself, but within the strictures of the measure. So he's a little less honorable, and sort of like the scene where he kind of sits down, and again, I don't want to spoil either, but he sits down with Charles and his group, and he kind of baits them a little bit. It's like he's kind of has some rough edges. He's not, lawful good, if you want to put it in D&D alignment terms. So his character I wanted to make a little more nuanced than Goody Two Shoes Knight. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I highly recommend people check out the story Hunters and Seekers because it is a good one, and it's original. I mean, it's in a time that we have not explored, in a location that has not been explored in that time, and it's some really nice characters. I mean, you did a really good job of developing them out.
Thank you. Awesome. I appreciate it.
Marco, let's talk about the Knight and the Serpent because, well, first, please introduce yourself and the story.
Well, I'm Marco. I'm from Italy, and it's the first time I actually write something to completion, at least. I always wanted to write, even as a teenager, as a kid, but I never really focused enough to put the work to an end. So this is the first time. I saw your call for submission in December. I said, "Oh, cool! I'm not able to write a Dragonlance fiction. Like I didn't feel comfortable." But then I said, "Okay, but there's this story I had in my mind from more than a year at that point." And I said, "Well, that I'd like to publish in some way or another. Like if one of the stories I invented I should be published, I think it should be this." So I contacted you and said, how much should it adhere? Because I consider to like cut some things in order that it could be faked into a Dragonlance setting. But the point was that it was February when I decided to try. So in a month I had to write it all, and it did came a bit rushed, especially toward the end, because I ended it. Technically, if we go by Italy's time zone, I ended it later than the deadline. But since since there was this 6 hours more, I was able to end it and send it to you.
Just under the wire.
Yes. I think I finished writing at 2 a.m. or something. Like it was a bit rushed.
Yeah.
But it was an effort that I'm glad to have made.
Well, the story is called The Knight and the Serpent. Do you want to give us a
Yes.
brief overview of what it's about?
Yes, it's a tale about a knight coming, which is he gets injured during a patrol, and he is saved by this creature, but there's a conflict because the culture of the knight identifies this creature as a monster. Like they think it's evil, and it's nothing good can come from it. So he has to struggle with the reality that this creature is actually helping him, but he doesn't trust her because she's female.
Yeah.
And this is the development of the character, and the story is about this conflict he has to endure.
I got to say, this was a very, very intimate portrait of really one character, though there was primarily two characters throughout the entire thing. The knight is really the one that we're sort of hyper focusing on throughout the course of it. And I really liked it. It really reminded me of there's a film sequel to Braveheart about Robert the Bruce, and he's sort of run out of Scotland, and he's like trying to survive and stuff. And it's this intimate portrait of the character Robert the Bruce through his, coming back into power in Scotland. And that's the vibe. You're not stepping on anyone's toes with the story or anything. It's just that's the intimate vibe I was getting between these two characters. And it does. And I mean, again, you create your entirely own world. You have ages of history that you just tease in this story, which I found really compelling. But this could easily fit into the Dragonlance universe as well, because it deals with that sort of inherent bigotry based on the culture you were raised in and the overcoming of that bigotry through personal experience. And I really, really appreciated that aspect to it. Is there like, where did that come from you that you wanted to tell that type of a story?
Well, it does come from, let's say, two branches. I hope. One is a more like of my interest. Like I'm fascinated by the there's this concept in the religion passage from paganism to the religions. I don't know how to, what's the right term, from the post-Christianism and the post-paganism religions, that I find like there's this passage between seeing the world as shades of gray to seeing the world as black and white.
Right, right.
And this was kind of the passage I wanted to make with the relations that, yeah, you depict us as evil, but the world is not made of good and evils. The other is more personal, because a couple years ago I had experience, positive experience, nothing traumatic, and I kind of shifted, like a big chunk of my perception of the world shifted. So I also wanted to reflect that
Nice.
in the story, because even if like I'm not old, I know I'm less than 30 years old, but I've lived my whole life with a perception of the world up to that point, and then it shifted radically.
Yeah.
So I also wanted to put some of this into the story.
That's great. Well, it certainly has a hint of aspiration at the end of it, specifically to like the idea of a better world through the sharing of the experience that this knight had in this really tumultuous time. I do kind of want to talk a little bit about world building with you, because it would have been really easy for you just to keep it super isolated, not mention history or different epics or spans of time, but you did. I mean, is this something that you have developed out in other places or other stories or other games or anything like that? Or did you just come up with this world for this story?
Yeah, I actually came out for the story. The word came out for the story. I did consider adapting it into a campaign, but I struggled to put it down in a way that worked. It really wasn't thought to be a campaign word, but more of a storytelling word. So I haven't found a way to comfortably use it on the table, so I just abandoned that idea for now, at least. Many of the concepts did develop during writing on the world building. I did have a couple of ideas, because when I created this world, I haven't created like the whole planet, just this kingdom. And the concept in my mind was, okay, like creating a kind of Iborian hero, like Robert E. Howard's Sword and Sorcery, but with the like chivalry of King Arthur, and not using monsters only as monsters. Like it's Dark Age, and the creature of the past are all monsters, dark creatures. The idea was meant to be that there was this age of monsters, like in cool histories. No, histories is not short stories.
Yeah.
And but I wanted to say, yeah, exactly like in the book, it's the perception is that those are just monsters and all, but it's actually like the world has been fractured by this rupture between the world of monsters and the worlds of men.
Yeah.
And it needs to be rejoined together.
Well, I do like, because there is an inference that there would be a better outcome of the world if, like there was once a better semblance of the world that was sort of fractured. It seemed like to infer that it was from mankind and civilization and stuff that was the catalyst of that fracturing. But that moving forward, there would be almost a reunification, or at least existence on a better terms between them, assuming that this knight can effectively share his experience and have people understand it. No, I think you did a great job of without going into extraneous detail about the history of the world, of titillating us enough that we want to learn more about the world with what you did provide. And I think that's always a very strong stepping point and strong execution of world building itself, is just give enough to get through the story, but that enough means we're interested and want to learn more, so great job.
Thank you very much.
I will say, just for people, there's, of course, Marco is from Italy. The way that, like, sort of the syntax of sentence structure and some of the communication, I maintained that integrity, and so it is going to be a little bit discordant from the rest of the stories, but I thought it added a little bit of air of authenticity. I mean, it's still, it's all grammatically correct, and it's got spelling is all appropriate and everything there, but and punctuation and stuff. But it's just the sort of the structure of it. It just felt more true to the author and the story, and so know that will be a slightly different read than the other stories as you're going through it. Just making sure everyone understands that. Chris, let's move on to you. You had a hate crime image at the top of your story. Why did you write a hate crime?
No. So that is just a night. The idea of the story is I wanted to do a fun murder mystery. I think at the time you were reviewing Murder in Tarsus, and it occurred to me that there really haven't been many Dragonlance murder mystery stories. So when this opportunity came up, which I'm super stoked about and appreciate you doing all this, I thought it would be fun to do a murder mystery. So the idea is it's after the War of the Lance. The Whitestone Council is still, the Whitestone Alliance, I should say, is still frail. It could snap at a moment's notice. All the old, prejudices could come back. And they're meeting to try to formalize the alliance because there's still the remnants of the Red Army and the Blue Army and what have you, the Dragon armies. So the idea is that this heroic figure from the war, a knight of Solamnia, is murdered during this council meeting, and the council is protected by this magic shield to keep outsiders out while this very important document of the Whitestone Alliance is signed. So there are, suspects is about 5 suspects, potentially more, because there could be, some twists. And what I did during the story is there's a clear delineation point where the investigator goes to sleep and tells the reader, okay, in the morning, I have to make a decision as to who's guilty for this crime. So that, I wanted it to be fun for the reader to pause it at that point if they're listening on audio, or stop reading, think about all the clues and try to come up with, who they think the suspect is. So I thought that would be fun. But I think the rest of you, I hope, will agree. As you're writing, one of the cool things about this process is that the story takes a different turn. I remember Margaret Weiss saying in an interview that the story, she has to see where the story will take her. And I always thought that was strange because her and Tracy Hickman have these outlines, sketched out for years, I thought, but it's true. So as I'm writing this story about a fun take on a murder mystery, it started to become less about the person that was murdered and more about the sacrifice of someone else in the story. So the last part of it became, very, very personal, very emotional, writing that story. And I don't want to give anything away, but I wanted to differentiate between Sturm, who we've all, love as a character, and not every knight is as heroic as they seem. And sometimes the sacrifices come in the shadows, unknown and unsung by the bards. That was kind of my take on it.
Yeah, I like this because we only hear reference to this event or to the attempts at having this treaty in Dragons of Summer Flame. And it's only hinted that that's what Tanis and Laurana are failing at being able to accomplish. And so it's really interesting to have that be kind of this intimate setting of all these different representatives of, the sort of the free peoples of Krynn, I guess, doing their best to, even though they just defeated the dragon armies and banished to Kesis, they still are going to have their own inherent histories, especially the longer lived races and stuff. And so I really like that aspect of this. You put in a whole lot of characters and they didn't feel like tropes of characters. And I think that's a strength of it, is that, for example, you have like 2 dwarves. I think there's like 3 elves or something like that. They did feel different. The way that you present them, the way that they speak, I felt like you took care in making sure not just to fall back on a trope of a character versus developing out an actual character and how they would engage with this. Maybe could you speak to that a little bit? How do you, if you, because we know Dragonlance is very tropey. How do you break that down? Because you're trying to tell a nuanced story where you have to differentiate between characters and races, like within races. How do you approach that?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I definitely in a short story, I know you have limited space when you're introducing multiple suspects. So it was a challenge for a murder mystery, but what I wanted to do is I tried to use differentiating characteristics so that you would know right away, okay, well, that elf is ancient. That elf seems more like Dalamar's age, sly, young, sleek. So right away, I tried to use age. I tried to use temperament. So like the hill dwarf was angry and aggressive, and the mountain dwarf was very laid back, almost like a Dugan Redhammer kind of, take on it. So you have a limited space to try to, create that difference. But I thought that was important. I also thought it was important to throw out some motive and some red herrings so that it could potentially be each of them as the killer. But if you pause it, or if I do audio a lot, so but if you reread it or if you pause it and really think about the evidence, there is one suspect who has a lot more evidence than the others, and that is ultimately who probably is the killer. But they each had little bits of evidence that were pointing in their way. And I thought that was part of that too, separation of the different characters, like you said.
I did feel there's a moment right before it gets to the point where it's like, okay, well, we have to blame someone tomorrow. Like we have to name the killer tomorrow. And so they sort of rack out for the night. I did have a distinct feeling of, I don't know who did it, because everyone has motive. But like you could have gone any one direction. So here's my question. Is the way you ended it the way you always planned on ending it?
It was.
Okay.
I was. And there was there's a key word in the confession note that gives away the motive, that motive is the strongest motive potentially of any what do they call it? Crime of passion.
Right.
So there's one word that gives away, who the killer had to be, but that particular character had about 3 or 4 pieces of evidence, whereas the other ones only had 1 or at most 2 pieces of evidence. Kind of, they all had motive, but the evidence was strongly in favor of the person who ultimately was the guilty party. But the interesting thing about the story is that was supposed to be the whole story, but for me, the second act, or the third act, is where I think the story is ultimately more important, and I'm hoping to people is more meaningful and enjoyable, and that's just part of the writing process, which is so much fun. Is you don't know when you start writing where the story is going to take you, and if you're open to that, if you're not rigid in your original plans, have to be how it ends up. I think people will really enjoy it, and I encourage more people to do creative writing. This is all new to me. My first thing I ever wrote was for your 40th anniversary celebration. I wrote a short story, and I've just fallen in love with the I was gonna say craft, but I'm not someone who should say that. I'm not. I'm still a novice, but the difficult task of writing, I'm very much in love with.
Well, I think you did a really good job, and I think the story is strong enough to stand on its own. I sort of bounced between the idea of having that more fleshed out story that you started with versus trimming it down to fit the character count or the word count that I had sort of pushed on everyone. And I go back and forth between the two. I mean, you had a great sense of adding in, it's not really giving anything away, gnomes as a device for the story, as a narrative device. And I thought that was really, really interesting, because usually whenever we encounter gnomes, it's the slapstick outcome that we're looking for. They're just there to, have someone giggle or laugh or make some sort of racist tropey comment to them in world. And you actually use them as a means of solving, the potential problem the story speaks to. I'm trying my best to tiptoe around without giving anything away.
Yeah.
So
No, I appreciate
was
that.
there a reason why you decided to have gnomes be, well, let's say effective versus the disasters that they typically are?
Yeah, the Whitestone Council, one of the important elements to me that I always loved about Dragonlance is it's these diverse races that collectively had to come together, because the Elven army couldn't defeat the Draconians and the dragons. The dwarves couldn't defeat them. The human knights couldn't defeat them. But collectively, as a world united, they could, which I always loved that idea. So I wanted to introduce as many characters as I could. So the idea of the gnome is I just wanted to have another of the good races included in the story. And then, of course, if they're in the story, I wanted them to have meaning. At one point in the story, I did have a Kender, but I found that he just stole the story.
Literally and figuratively.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Pun intended.
Exactly. So I did have to find a way to have him trapped outside of the magic shell.
Well, I definitely highly recommend all of these stories. But yeah, I really enjoyed it hanging in the balance. I thought you did a really good job, Chris.
I appreciate it. I just want to add one quick thing. For people like myself who love the audio, Adam absolutely crushed it on all of these. And for members who get to hear the member readings done, he does member readings once a week. The idea that same voice that I've listened to for years on the channel, reading actual canon and actual TSR and Wizards of the Coast products, got to read my story, was so freaking cool.
Yeah.
And you crushed it, man. It was awesome.
Thanks.
It was really cool.
I appreciate it. It was a nightmare of a process reading these, I got to be honest. Not because of you guys at all, but just me sitting down and editing and recording and editing, and it was a nightmare. I've never done that scale of anything before, so it was a process. David, let's talk about you and your story. Do you want to introduce yourself and your story? Oh, I think we've got a delay here. Are you able to, if you turned off your camera, does it help with the audio by chance?
Hi.
Oh yeah, it's not going through at all.
My name's so I also have. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, hold on. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. Cool. Sorry for the audio. I'm at my school. We usually have decent Wi-Fi, but yes, my name is David Paul Holloway. I'm a.
Oh man.
English teacher.
Yeah, that's a shame.
Yeah, I'm sorry, David. This is really just chopping up. It's not coming through. Yeah, unfortunately, this is a case where. Do you want to try to maybe restart Discord or maybe the computer really quick and come back, and you can just rejoin and see if that helps? Okay, cool. Let's try that.
Okay. Sure.
So before he comes,
this time?
go ahead.
wasn't me this time.
I mean, it's life. It happens. It's, you know,
Yeah.
we're sending signals off planet and then back on planet in some cases, and so it can get pretty crazy.
We're talking to someone from Italy. How cool is that?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
international. That's awesome. Well, let's
Yeah,
just talk
international.
about writing in general. Is there a process that you guys take? Let's start with Anthony here. Do you is there a process that you like a certain period of day that you prefer to write? I mean, what's your individual process like?
Yeah, I mean, especially as I've gotten older, I'm like writing is not just a young person's game, but so now I'm writing in the daytime as much as possible. Cramming through the night and like that stereotype of the writer, writing in through the dark of the night when everyone else is asleep is getting harder to do. So I try to do it during the day in the morning, wake up early. But it really is, if you want to read a book on writing advice, read On Writing by Stephen King. I highly recommend that. Like that book just really gives you, and I know you're like, oh, Stephen King, but the guy's famous. He's written a ton.
He's awesome.
Say what you will about his writing. Some's not great, some's better, but his writing advice really is important. It's really vital. So you really have to you just get that draft out. You get that first draft, just get it out onto the page. And so real writing is rewriting. And that's been my mantra. And it has helped me so much over the years to really just stop, get out of your head, stop trying to craft and edit while you're writing. And as he says, like you keep the edge of your narrative blade sharp, like you just almost vomit it out and, whatever that is. And then like Chris was saying earlier, it really, and like Tolkien said, like everyone said, like writing grows with the tail, the tail grows with the telling. Mm-hmm. So that's really vital that, a lot of new writers like that. And I know I was like that. I'm like really a perfectionist and trying to craft it as it comes out. But so that's my process. It's just like, get it out, get the framework out. Like you can try to do notes, some people are planners and some people are just like seat of the pantsers. I'm sort of a combination. Like I'll write some notes, but I'm like, oh, these characters are starting to beat the insides of my brain, so I need to get them out. Yeah. And just really get it out as fast as you can. And give it structure and give it form, but remember that real writing is rewriting. That's like the advice I give to like anyone who's aspiring. It's like go back and the craft of like revision and give yourself enough time. And that's why it's always tough with like deadlines, yeah. Like so I started, like Marco was saying, like I kind of started in February too, but I had, like he said, picking these ideas around in my head. I had a campaign I was working on, so they already were half formed. So that's my process is like, now that I'm, I've hit the 50 mark in life, I've been putting off writing, having the day job, getting the family done, having a family and everything. Now it's like, I'm in this part of my life where I'm like, get it out, get it done, time's wasting. So it's, but that's really the key for me is make a routine, get up early, get a lot of rest and just write that first draft as fast as you can and as like structured as you can. But then remember that the real writing is craft of the rewriting and give yourself breathing room to do that and time.
I think that's great advice. I think that's an interesting process. Welcome back, David.
Yeah.
Let's see what we got. Definitely.
Everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Cool. Sorry about the technical difficulties. My name is David Paul Holloway. I'm a teacher in Beijing, China, so I have a vastly different time zone than everybody, probably. So right now it's like 7:45 in the morning. I have class soon, so I'll try to get this out real fast.
Oh wow.
I've always been into Dragonlance since I was little. I remember reading like Kaz Minotaur. I think that might have been my first book I read.
Nice. And
I just happened to be the one my uncle had on his shelf. Then I read like a whole bunch of them. I was always into fantasy. One of the things I've always done, I kind of have a little joke from my family that like I keep making 1,000 characters. I can't stop making characters. For whatever a game it is, L5R or D&D or Shadowrun or whatever. So like I thought like why don't I put these characters into stories? Because I have like folders of them.
Wow.
Just because I just I like character building, and so then I realized I might like world building. So I'm trying my hand at that. I'm also very new to the story writing stories. I'm an English teacher, but I don't really I haven't really much.
Oh no.
Always enjoyed Knights of Salamia and Wizards of High Sorcery from the Dragonlance setting. Gnomes, and kind of like how Chris made gnomes. I didn't get to read your story, but from what you guys were talking about, you guys made them useful, and I thought their characters in the story, why they always have to be a trope. They don't always have to be comedic. They can have personalities. While I did try to maintain that some kind of humor for my characters, I try to make the main character actual, more relatable. I try to make.
I think you did a really good job of making your main gnome character relatable. With your story, we hyper focus initially on the gnome, and then we move on to other characters, and then we have that sort of team up moment.
So,
which I thought was just really great. We're still having some delays.
It's tough. It's beaming in all the way from Beijing.
Yeah.
You had a great story. I really liked his.
Well, and I've never had read about a gnome being an investigator. I mean, clearly there must be some sort of job like that in Mount Nevermind. Of course, there's going to be all sorts of mishaps that they need to look into, and so I just found it very, very interesting to take that type of approach. And then, David, I think you did a really good job of making us feel like we could step into Mount Nevermind, and it wasn't just all gnome flingers, although those are still persistent. It was this idea of transportation was slightly different, and the interaction between the different gnome characters. It did feel like they were individual characters rather than just the species or the race of gnome, and I really appreciate that, especially when it comes to a short story. Did you, when it came time for that sort of final conflict, the group coming together, what was that like for you?
I had it. Can everyone hear me?
Yes,
I heard that.
Yeah.
It was really fun bringing all those characters together. All right, cool. Like they said, you don't really know how it will be until you actually put pen to paper, or in my infants. I wrote everything on my iPhone, on the bus. Or 90% of my story is written on the bus, through my notepad, and then. Because I have a long span of commuting, so anyway, I didn't really know how it would end and how the characters would come together. I tried a little bit about running our advanced second edition D&D game with some of my story elements in there, and I made an Amazo character. And some of my Islamic Knight characters, he was giddy about that being in a story. Nice. I intersperse different tidbits of the GMI, or in my mind it's Gimme, because it's secretly a thieves guild, but they end up being a necessity for investment guilds. They're kind of like an insurance company. They're we're trying to figure out why things happen, but they just secretly take things. And Brass Bones is secretly kind of like a villain in additional. If I write additional stories, he would be kind of like a father figure / power guy, a secret guild master of a thieves guild. I know that was real subtle, and I took so many things out of the story to crank down to the 8,000 timeline, 8,000 word limit. So I also had things about the Seekers in there, but I had to get rid of them because they weren't really pivotal to the story. They were just like, I like the idea of that cult. That was pretty neat. But I had to cut it out due to constrictions. And there's also like a lot more various aspects that I had like removed that talk more about the gimme or more relationships wise with him and the Brass Bones, because again he was like their father figure that replaces Zapped because he may or may not have done away with the main character's uncle. So it's that's just what my process was, I guess.
Nice. Well, I do really like that it felt like a team-up story, even more than some of the other ones, which also had a team-up element to it, because it was like we got to meet one character and then the next and then the next and then they all come together. So it felt more like a traditional role-playing game setup than, you know, like a story where everyone already knows each other and they're going on an adventure. And so that differentiated it from the other stories in the anthology. And it, you know, it just made it a lot of fun so that you got to know each of these characters as flawed versions of the type of characters that they are. You also included a nice little mechanical bird, falcon, right? Do you want to speak to that? Where did that come from?
Because I made these characters in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd Edition. I rolled for my familiar, and it turned out to be a hawk.
Nice.
And this, and I just kind of like I wanted him to have like a familiar, but he kind of made it because he's a gnome, but like it's the Wizards of High Sorcery would see it as like kind of heretical because like it's magic, but it's kind of science. So it's kind of like so wizards and gnomes are kind of like diametrically opposed.
Mm-hmm.
So I just thought it was like a nice like in between stage and like gave him like a little friend to like kind of talk to.
Yeah. Well, I know.
But
oh, go ahead.
I want to thank everyone for listening to me and thank you for the opportunity for this. I do have to go to work.
Yeah.
I have to go teach. But thank you all for your time and hope you enjoy the story.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for spending time with us and sharing your thoughts on it. Really do appreciate it, David.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye. You will.
Good job, David.
Good job.
So,
Good job.
sorry, I was waiting for the camera to shift over. Marco, let me sort of ask you, as far as your writing process, is there anything that you enjoy, like a specific time, or, you know, is there like sort of like a little ritual you might have of a specific drink you want to have while you're writing this, or, you know, what's your process like?
Okay, I didn't really have a process because I was writing in the few spare times I had, because between work and then usually I get home and there are my nieces here, so maybe I have my mother, my sister. So I usually write after dinner or on the weekend when I had time. I just got the chance and try to throw everything out.
Yeah.
There were days where I stand like looking like this at the paper without putting anything on it, and so no, there was the last day, which the last day of writing. I dedicated it all, I believe, to from the morning to night. So even while I was eating, I had the notebook, and I was writing. No, yeah, that next I will do this, because the time was catching up. So no, it was really a chaotic process. I then took some courses, I believe, lessons on creative writing, and then they told me a way to structure it a bit more. Should I continue? I'd probably try at least to apply this. But yeah, I did. Yeah, they came after I finished writing, so they weren't in time. to help me. Yeah, it was more a mess. My process was a mess. Yeah.
Yeah. So Chris, let me sort of close out our discussion with you. What's the biggest hurdles you think you experienced, or just in general when it comes to writing that you deal with?
So I feel like for me, it's always been the dialogue. I feel like that's the toughest part to get down, because it's one thing to write it, to as like a reader, or what fits the story, but oftentimes when I'm reading other people's dialogue, and especially myself, it just comes off as clunky, or it seems like they're saying things that fit the narrative too easily.
Right.
And what I find that helped with that is I really had to get into the mindset of role playing, where take the protagonist's desires out of a conversation, take that to the side. What does the person that they're speaking with, what is their motivations, what is their personality, and really try to role play as that person. What would they say? What do they want out of the conversation? Even if it messes up the story, the dialogue will come out way more organically that way, as opposed to just trying to have the dialogue fit where you want the story to go. And that's why I think role playing, D&D especially, and creative writing work so well hand in hand. And the history of Dragonlance started that way. It was a D&D gaming module, and then a novels, and it's really cool that this project came into effect, because writing and playing the game of it just seems to go in sync so well. So I think that's a mindset, is you have to get into all of the characters, not just the protagonists, and every scene really speak from their heart. What would they say in that situation? I remember, like, the first story that I wrote for you for the 40th anniversary, there was like a character who wanted the Minotaur. He was trying to trick the Minotaur into doing something, and he was a lowly human, a young boy. And when I was like putting myself in the mindset of the Minotaur, would I fall for what he's saying? And I was like, no. So I just had him slap the guy, and that felt more organic. So anyway, that would just be my take on it. Is use your role playing skills, especially as a DM or a game master, as part of the creative writing.
I think that's great, and I do tend to wonder if writers make really good role players, or if they're too annoying because they put too much into it. Because there's definitely a level of it's good, but then I got to go over the top, and so I don't know. I imagine it would probably be the same with actors. Like there's got to be a sweet spot where you're like, okay, this isn't a performative craft that I'm doing. I'm playing a game to have fun, so I've got to pare it back a little bit. But I think that's great advice for getting into the character's shoes. I mean, perspective is everything with writing, I think. It's one of those things that I'm not a writer at all, and so I struggle with constantly whenever I write, is that the character perspective versus the overall statement I want to make with the story, the overall story itself, whatever that is. So
you didn't get to introduce your story to the audience.
Yeah.
Tell us about yours.
Well, mine, it's called Love's Remains. It's about a knight who is signed up for something with good intentions, and the war changes him. And just the reality that the life itself, you're going to find pieces of beauty in it, but ultimately it's going to tear you down in the end. That's really what the story is about. But there's like overt sexuality in it. There's overt gore. I tried to keep it PG-13 with suggestion of more, and I think I towed that line maybe a little too much, but I hope people enjoy it, because I desperately loved it. I did, like you were mentioning, Anthony, is I spewed it all out, and then I went through and refined it, and I still think it needs a lot of work, but I had to call it quits at some point. And so it was that situation of just going, this is good enough for what I need to do, what I need it to be right now, and I know I could make it infinitely better if I really wanted to. But it was the point where through each revision, when I was getting to specific points, I was so emotionally invested that I would actually get emotional writing it. and then rereading it because I like to read out loud in order to hear the pacing, and then refine it from that, whether it's clunky or not or whatever. And again, with everything, it's still, everything needs revisions and stuff. We got Engine Joe, of course, in the chat. He submitted a story as well, What's in a Name, or The Kender's Top Knot. It's a really great story about how one of the most famous characters in all of Dragonlance got their name. Of course, the title should give it away, but I won't give it away just in case it doesn't. It's a fun little exploration. Kind of a middle finger to the second edition Tales of the Lands box set, but I appreciate it. So I liked it. So thank you, Joe, for putting that in there. Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of other authors. We may do another one of these, but that really is as much time as we have today. Thank you, gentlemen, so very much for joining me. One, for taking the time and submitting to this anthology. I think it is infinitely better with your stories included in it. And then two, are there any different projects you're working on or places that you would like to sort of promote that people can find you or your work on? Let's start with you, Anthony.
Yeah, I do have a website. It's silverbeardgames.com. There's not much on it right now. It's sort of a blog, but I want to use it I want to actually, first of all, post a link to this anthology, but also start putting out some of my gaming materials that I want to start publishing, self-publishing. So, but it's Silverbeard just because I adopted that. Now that I've gotten older, it's easier to pronounce than my last name, Simeone. And I know that there's many people that have Silverbeards my age, but it's silverbeardgames.com. Go see me there. And if you're ever in the Philadelphia area, come see me at the Philadelphia Area Gaming Expo. I'm a staff member on that. And shout out to them and to Ron, the organizer. So, and we do a lot of Dragonlance there, among other things. So
Awesome.
Come on out and meet me there if you're ever there, and we can talk shop about writing and gaming and everything else. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
And how about you, Marco? Do you have anything that you would like to promote?
Oh, actually, I don't have any social media.
That's probably for the best. Like, social media is toxic as hell.
Yeah, I know. I just use YouTube, and it's already too much sometimes.
That's why he's so happy.
For real. All right, Chris, is there anything you'd like to promote?
Yeah, occasionally I show up on a friend of our Colin's horrific podcasts. He sometimes has me as a guest. Other than that, I'm just working on the storyboard for the second anthology. What do you think, Adam?
Not doing
Come on.
I don't know. Let's get a little
do
distance
it.
with this one, and maybe. All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, again. And for all of you tuning in and watching this, please download. It's free. It's a PDF. It's an ebook, and it's an audiobook. You can download them all for free and listen to them or read them at your leisure. Everyone put in a lot of time and effort for it, and I highly recommend. There's a lot of really great stories. Mine maybe not so much, but the other ones are really good, and so I highly, highly recommend you check it out. And of course, they're not all specific to Dragonlance. There are a couple that are their own universes, and that actually adds a little bit of texture and contrast to the Dragonlance specific ones. So you can look forward to diving into a whole new world with some of those stories as well. Thank you all so much for tuning in to today's Dragons of Ash and Twilight Hangout. Are you interested in fan fiction anthologies? Do you have a favorite anthology that you've read thus far? Feel free to email me at info@dlsaga.com or leave a comment below. I would like to take a moment and remind you to subscribe to the YouTube channel, ring the bell to get notified about upcoming videos, and click the like button. It all goes to help other Dragonlance fans learn about this channel and its content. Thank you to creator patrons Aaron Hardy, D. Robert Handy, developer patrons Chris Androu and Sam Ruiz, and all of the YouTube members. This channel is all about celebrating the wonderful world of the DragonLance Saga. Thank you so much for joining in that celebration. For everyone here, my name is Adam. Until next time, Slàinte mhath.
Chris, Marco, you guys should